Hey, guess what, everybody? We have a really, really great guest today. His name is actually Mike Marusic. I'm sure you know he's president and CEO of Sharp. If you don't know him by now, you're probably not in our business. So, Mike, welcome to next week's Life's podcast.
It's great to be here, Mike. Thank you. I thought I wouldn't get an invite, so I'm glad to be on the show.
Well, we're happy to have you on the show. And actually, it really worked out extraordinarily well because I appreciated your invite to the National Dealer Meeting out in Vegas. Because if I wasn't there, I don't think I would have had this. I would not have appreciated the unbelievable vibe that you guys set. So, to kick this off right, I mean, it's basically 2-3 weeks since that event. I can tell you that I was thrilled to be there. I learned a lot. I'd love to hear your takeaways on it and expectations for, what was it, 700-800 people?
Yeah, we actually had 1,000 people at the meeting, and you're right. Normally we target around 700-800 because that's probably a good amount, that we can manage well. And so, the enthusiasm was obviously there to get 1,000 people, and so then the pressure becomes delivering. And I think we had a lot of great announcements. Obviously, the highlight of the show was Sharp getting into production print. Right, that was something that we needed to do. And we jumped in a big way, and I think that was kind of the highlight for most dealers. But, a lot of product introductions in A4, a lot of security offerings, a whole different gamut of products on the display side. So I think it was something for everyone at the show, and so far the feedback's been great. It's proof is in the pudding down the road, but so far the feedback has been outstanding.
Well, I know the vibe that from everyone that I spoke to at the event was absolutely spectacular. And you're right. I think I don't know how you did it. You probably didn't have NDA signed because then it was a secret. But holy cow, you blew everybody away with that high-end production.
Yeah, we did have a lot of NDAs in the building on that one because we had to keep that locked down. And honestly, I was stunned, that word didn't get out. I remember I walked through the product fair the day before. And, we kind of had it hidden. We had a fake wall up. And, someone pointed out to me that there was a mistake made in setting up the building and that they put lights above, like, kind of the storage area. And I go, oh, man, I pretended like that's a big boo-boo. And, what a waste of money. And, boy, I'm going to kill someone for that one. And, and then, of course, next day the wall was gone and, the lights were over the production product. So amazing that we kept it quiet. I still can't believe we pulled that off.
Well, it was shocking, and the buzz was like unbelievable. And I think one dealer came up to me and said, I think he's on your dealer advisory council. I've been talking to Mike Marusic about this for 2 years, and I didn't know, and he was like really funny about it. But, the other thing, too, that kind of shocked me, kudos to you and your team. And I'll probably preface this a little bit with, I've watched you out and about. I mean, all year, the last 10 months or so, the road shows, everything that you've been doing to keep, I think, Sharp visible, active, and vibrant had to have paid a huge dividend in getting that audience to the point that you did when you brought them into Vegas.
Yeah, I think, being out is obviously a big advantage to really understand what's on the dealer's mind. So I don't think it took me being out to understand that we needed production print. But I do think a lot of the other areas we covered about diversification, the other categories, how it fit with what they were doing, security, print, all those pieces really paid off and just being out everywhere. And, John Sheen and I, we joked right when COVID hit, we tried actually renting an RV. True story, we called everywhere looking for an RV because you couldn't travel. And we said, well, we're going to rent an RV and, kind of travel around to the dealers that were open. Couldn't get one, but, we ended up since then just being on the road. Every event, everywhere someone wants us to appear, we will appear. And I think that's valuable. And just getting the feedback, understanding what's on dealers' minds, what are their challenges, and then kind of tailoring our dealer meeting around it. And then I think you remember back in the fall, we did a road show. And we typically do those road shows to kind of, here's where we're at. What do you think? And it's smaller, it's intimate, so you get a lot of feedback, not only from the dealer owners, but from the reps. And so then we kind of fine tune our dealer meeting, like, okay, maybe things we're thinking about weren't exactly on top of mind for a dealer, but these are top of mind. So let's make sure we nail it at the dealer meeting. And that was kind of the goal. So worked out.
Well, kudos to you because it was clearly visible. I mean, you and your team were out there doing what you needed to do. And I think it paid a huge dividend, just not only in general, But when I saw the numbers that you put up at the dealer meeting, I was shocked. Maybe you want to share that with people.
Yeah, we've had a good 5-year run really. Prior to COVID, we were already doing double-digit growth, and then COVID hit, and obviously we went backwards. But we didn't have the severe drop off that the rest of the market seemed to have had, and then coming out of it, it's just been a tear. Obviously, we executed well during the supply chain. I know there's. I like that people, sometimes say, oh, well, they're backed by Foxconn. That is true. That does help. But it also allows for people to say, well, there's nothing we can do. So it allowed us to execute on other things where we did a lot of little things over that course of the period of supply chain to make sure that our dealers had product. And I think the dealers saw that. I think they were on the communication end. They saw the changes we were making, the products that we were adjusting, modifications we made. And so they saw that it wasn't just, kind of big brother or daddy saving us, but really a lot of little, tweaks here and there to make sure that, the dealers had product, and we just kept growing. So it's been a great couple years, and hopefully we keep it going.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I think you showed a number that you were up, you were up 10% in a shrinking market, basically. Is that correct?
Yeah, our business now is bigger than it was pre-pandemic, significantly bigger. That's been a big help. Every year we've grown, over the previous year about 10%, with the exception of that COVID year. We went backwards, by about, I think it was 19% during COVID. But, it continued to grow. And most importantly, we saw that both our sharp-only dealers, which, to me, that's execution, right? Because share shift is great. I want it. Don't get me wrong. But I also want our sharp-only dealers to see significant growth, and they've been up double digit, right? So I think that to me is really rewarding, because then we're doing what we need to do, which is growing the business for our dealers, not just kind of shifting between two OEMs within a dealer.
Well, I don't want to spend too much time on the show, but the show actually was a great indication of everything that you're doing. So when I think through, the gentleman that was responsible for supply chain. I forget his name. That was awesome.
Yeah. Dave and his team really did a tremendous job. And there were things during that period where really understanding the core of how supply chain works. And there's a couple tricks we have that in case there's another issue we're not revealing. But there were things we share with the dealers where we get a lot of pressure saying, hey, a lot of the other OEMs are moving. Incoming to the East Coast, and moving from the West Coast, and you guys should do that. Well, Dave looked at the numbers and go, basically 2 or 3% of the product from the West Coast going to an East Coast port would overload the East Coast port. Right. And we stayed with it. A lot of people moved east, and then there was a huge backlog on the east, and we got product flying on the west. So, there really was. Dave did a tremendous job, and his whole team did a tremendous job of just making sure they understand what was at the root cause of different elements, whether it was chips, logistics at the port, or logistics, in the trucking routes. So I think they did a tremendous job, and he kind of explained a lot of that at the meeting.
Yeah, and frankly, your agenda, the content was awesome. Although I don't think Kevin Van Cannell was all that good. You might want to rethink that.
I'm gonna bring that up. I was texting him earlier this morning, so I'll bring up another topic to him.
Hey, I love that guy. He did a great job, and we'll see him. We're going to start our ride this year out there in Ann Arbor. So yeah, we'll have a little fun. So a couple of change subjects a little bit. 1,000 people. You had a mix. I mean, a big, small, in between. So when you look at the rest of 23, and I'm sure you have high expectations, especially given what you just launched. I'm kind of curious when you look at the growth of the industry. What do you feel? I mean, I saw UBO there. I mean, I saw all these private equity people mixed in with independent dealers. So what's your feeling about both those groups? If you were going to say something about independent versus private equity.
Yeah, I think we touched on a little bit during the general session. Obviously, private equity is a major factor in the industry, and at the same time, I see a place for everybody. I really do. The theme of our meeting was opportunity meets execution. I think it really comes down to executing. So I see, some of the private equity companies, obviously they have large scale, they can cover large parts of the market. And so, they're executing against a strategy that says, hey, what's the value we can offer by being across the country? And that actually is a lot of value, right? So they continue to grow, they continue to expand. At the same time, a local smaller dealer has a different value proposition that they can bring to their market. And that was what we were trying to express to the dealer community is like, okay, find your niche, right? Where do you play? Because the market is still growing. I mean, document is not a growth market. I don't want to say it's this huge growth market, but what we provide is growing, right? Technology services for your end users. And so, the smaller players can be more nimble. They can get into the laptops, they can get into displays, they can get into MPS and the documents of traditional business. So there's a lot of room for both organizations and both worlds to exist. And I think that's one of the areas, and I may have said in the, you may have picked up in my presentation, I talked about sailing and adjusting your sails. And, at the end, I said, look, we didn't, adjust your sails, don't build a plane, right? And really what I meant by that is, you can just tweak what you're doing today and start off and grow again, right? You don't need to just say, oh, I'm done and I got to do something radically different to survive. You do got to change. You do have to adjust. We do have to make changes in the industry. But I do believe that the core value we provide, which is service, is irreplaceable. And that's really what we got to build out off of. So we kind of tried, to explain the value of all the different segments. And hopefully we did, because we see all of them playing a big part of our growth.
Well, I thought that was a great analogy, actually, set your sales properly and so on. But you did a great job in communicating, the people side of it, the product side of it, and I think the attitude side of it, planning side of it. And that resonated with me. And so when you look at, the independent dealer, clearly there are some things they have to do, right? And there are questions, right? Should they get an IT or not an IT? And I noticed you made a big splash with ConnectWise. And maybe you'd like to explain a little bit more, because I thought that was a really smart tactic that you're taking.
Yeah, I looked, and this is again, you go around and you're visiting, the dealers and you're at events and you really see a pattern, right? Dealers are looking at managed services because it really is the most similar to what we do today. And, a lot of our dealers are in SMB. And again, there's a huge vacuum of opportunity there where they don't have big IT departments. Security and ransomware and all those types of things are a big concern. So how do you get into it, right? And obviously, we have a great partner in ConnectWise that we work with and we work with ourselves. But what we looked at is, one of the big areas overlooked was the print stream in the network, right?
Right,
So,
right.
that is something that you can kind of diagnose before the hack occurs. There's an anomaly in the print stream. And that's what the new software that we work with on ConnectWise does. So it kind of serves two purposes. Obviously, it allows the dealer to talk security when talking print. And I think that will resonate with any IT manager.
Right.
But second, it's kind of a gateway into full M&S. You don't have to do the full package right away. You can use our offering with ConnectWise as kind of a baby steps into the managed IT services business. But you begin to learn it, you begin to understand it, and you're providing something different to your dealers. And so Sharp's the first one who's really identified the idea of managing the print stream, understanding, security risks there. And I think that's kind of, we use the analogy in the meeting about being a good IT neighbor, right? We always talk being a neighbor on a network. So, well, locking your doors, that's what we've always focused on, right? On the network, which is, our ports and things like that on our devices. And that's pretty good in the industry, and Sharp has great offerings. Now we're looking kind of around the neighborhood and supporting like a neighborhood watch program here and say, okay, let's look at what's happening on the network. Let's look at the print streams before it comes into our print. What anomalies are we seeing? So I think it's a great opportunity for dealers to kind of step into managed IT, or at a minimum, have a great conversation with the IT manager about security of their printing devices.
Well, you stressed not only at your event, but as far back as ECS, 23, which, by the way, for the audience, Sharp has been never absent in 15 years of our ECS. So Ed, Doug, and Mike, you all picked it up, and we're so grateful for that. And you gave, and that's very important, because you do, not only corporately, I probably should extend a little bit further, not just ECS and all the help you do there for the industry. Our mission is float all boats.
Yeah.
Your support of VetTech and your own programs, hiring our heroes, and even your approval of allowing us to embrace, Chris Johnson and bring him into the fold. That's a testimony to the leadership of Sharp, and in this case, obviously you. So again, from all of us, we thank you very much for everything you've done there.
We appreciate that. Obviously, they're all, not only worthy causes in and of themselves, but like those are good causes because they help what's needed, and at the same time they're helping our business, right? So it just makes so much sense to be supportive of it.
Well, and you do it, and you do it well, and we're grateful, especially on the veteran side. That's huge, and we're pushing that forward. I might add, the other thing when you look at a combination of messages you sent at ECS on the road, and of course the NDM, but your AV position and that expanding network or portfolio. What's the message that you really want to emphasize for the dealers with all of that?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost is that Sharp's committed to the office, right? In the last couple of years, we bought the Dynabook business, the laptop business from Toshiba. We did a joint venture to acquire the NEC display business. So we keep surrounding our document business with other technologies for the office. But really, why is because the dealers can sell it. There's pathways, right? And we were very open at the dealer meeting. As you remember, we had dealers up there, and David Palomeni, said, look, it's when you get into AV, it's above what Sharp is talking about traditionally, and he's absolutely correct.
Right.
We can enter, a dealer can enter with Aquas boards and our touch displays for classrooms and conference rooms, and you can do conference room displays. But then when you get into automation and things like that, now it's a step up, right? So you got to, learn that industry a little more. But it's a great opportunity to diversify because, again, you have that service and technical expertise that many others don't have. And I can't stress that enough because that's really the secret sauce of our industry. So without incremental cost to your business operations, you can add incremental revenue. Same thing with the laptops. And then, I think why it's so important is it brings kind of a different spin on your company. There's not a lot of college grads and young people saying, "Hey, I want to enter the copier sales industry." And it's a great industry. I wish, I joke all the time about I wish I entered the industry as a sales rep. Maybe I'd own my own dealership. That's where the real money is, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, I know, I know.
As these career OEM guys talk, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that it also adds some excitement, right? It adds some sizzle to a dealership by saying, "Hey, we're in complete technology services in our markets," and I think that's another added value in driving the business.
So if I can change the subject a little bit, so I've come to know you pretty well over the last few years, and you have my admiration and great respect, and frankly, I'm an unabashed fan. I consider you a good friend, so and I really appreciate that. But when I look at your transition, right? I mean, you've been with Sharp what 25 years or so?
A little over 20 years, yeah.
So a little over 20 years, and frankly, I didn't know you all that well in the past until you started to take on this role. And I have never, ever seen a more classy, elegant transition from someone who ran basically the operation to someone that had to become really the ambassador and strategic planning guy and all of that, the sales guy. And kudos to you. I'm darn impressed with what you've done. How did you, what was the catalyst for making that transition look as easy and good as you've done it?
Well, I followed two really good leaders, so you kind of sit back when you watch what Ed was doing and then what Doug was doing, and you kind of pick up tidbits here. And honestly, the being the front man wasn't my goal. That's not my personality. Usually, I like to be a little more reticent. People don't believe that, but anyone who worked with me knows that. So as the transition was occurring, I said, well, it really is the responsibility in this role. There's no choice. So. I said the best way to do it, was get out there. And I had I remember the dealer, I guess I could say his name, his good friend, Rick Bastinelli. I got the role. I called Rick and said, okay, honestly, what do you think? And he said, no, we're good. But, Mike, most of your dealers don't know who you are. Those of us on the council know you, but everyone else knows you as the guy who speaks for 20 minutes at every dealer meeting, and that's it. And so got to get out there. And so I took that to heart and said, well, then I'm going to get out there. And you pick up, and I think the lesson I learned is don't be somebody else, just be yourself. For all my flaws, but just be yourself. And there's a place for me, the way I do things, hopefully. And that's kind of been what I've been doing. So learn a little bit from Ed, a little bit from Doug, and then kind of put your own spin on it.
Well, you did it, and you're doing it, and you're doing it great. And frankly, you under your leadership, I believe you guys, Sharp, I should say, is in fact a tier one company. You've crossed over the line. Now, obviously, a lot of things have to trail
Yeah,
behind that.
there's work to do, but I'll take it. But
Yeah,
yeah, we have
but
some work to do to get there.
yeah, so, clearly, but it's also very, very clear that you and your team are prepared and excited, and that combination really showed itself at the meeting. And so, do you believe what I say has merit? Are you going to hit that tier one mark?
I think that over the last couple of years, what we've been able to accomplish has given a lot of confidence in, kind of the mothership, as I call it, Foxconn,
Yeah.
to make even more investments. And, I've been spending more time with leadership there of what needs to get done to take us to the next level. But I also think, and I've said this on the roadshow, I've said this, talking to others, it's sometimes easier to becoming, as the industry is transitioning and changing. We're kind of a lean organization. And so because of that, we had to, by choice and by design, drive decision making lower in the organization. So that's an advantage, right? We can move pretty quick. You have layers of management. Management. I've been there, right? Management has to show what they're up to, right? They have to show they're doing something. That creates bureaucracy. So as we grow, we're going to be building what we need. We don't have to deconstruct what we had from kind of a legacy system into a new system. So that's really kind of our focus is let's really think through what we need to build out a stronger organization. Let's do it. And obviously there's people, there's investments we have to make in product, but the good news, at least from my perspective, is that we're willing to do it. The company's backing it, and there's a lot of excitement around investing in this business. So that to me is kind of the most reassuring. Like we joked before, we work for OEMs, right? I collect the salary, so I got a couple of years left of doing this. It's exciting to know that the company I work for wants to make those investments and keeps challenging me, like, what do we got to do? What do we got to do? That to me is the most exciting part, right? Because they could be sitting back, and that's scary when they don't ask questions, or they don't ask, you need more, they don't ask for investment ideas. So you're asking all the right questions. So that's exciting for me.
Well, so now we know the exciting part, the things that you enjoy and like, and frankly, you're doing it well. What frustrates Mike Marusic and the role that you're in? What dynamic do you wish you could say, hey, I got to fix this?
That's a hard one. I mean, I think that the pace, right? I like to just go.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, things don't move as fast as I would like. That, we continue to, there is still some legacy of, well, that's not how it's always been done. And you got to break down those barriers and think differently. And that's really been the one area for me is bureaucracy, right? I am anti-bureaucracy at my whole career. And so, now that I'm in the lead role, I guess it's a knock on myself. I haven't been able to kind of break down all the bureaucracy, and I got to do that. I think we got to move faster and get more done. So that area, kind of the tedium administrative side, that's not fun. Getting out in front of customers and visiting dealers, that's fun.
Well, so that's actually a good thing, and you recognize your own role in all of that. But so if you think about that's manageable, actually, because now I immediately go to, well, you're actually going to be forced to add some bureaucracy, especially as you launch this whole new high-end production. So what is your strategy for now executing on that opportunity?
Yeah, obviously we have a lot of work to do with production, and I'm not going to go into all the history, right? But for a number of reasons, we had to keep it really tightly wrapped until April 1, and so I would agree with an assessment if someone says, hey, you introduced a product, you got a lot of work to do.
Yeah,
that's obviously true. We've got a lot of work to do, so we got to build out that organization and really get the understanding of production, press business, which is different than what we've been in. And I think it's important, we have to recognize that it's not our current product on steroids. It's a different category.
Yeah.
And we've really got to build that out. I'm not going to give away all the things we're going to do, but, obviously that's an area that Sharp has not been in. So expertise in that area is critical, and the development of training programs and support programs and all those things have to come together rather quickly. we're planning the product's coming at the end of the year. And so it seems like far away as you sit here, in early spring or mid-spring, but it goes quickly. And, a lot of work has got to be done. And those categories actually have a very long sales cycle. So even though the product is coming out in the end of the year, we really got to be up and running, early fall to kind of, prime the pump for it. So, yeah, there's a lot to do there. And I think, we've identified what we need to do. And now we just got to, as I say again, on our theme of our meeting, we got to execute against it. So.
Well, hopefully ECS in January will give you a kickoff. Hopefully you'll keynote for us again. So you take a look at the calendar. We'll pull you.
Oh, that's already marked. That's done. So. And
All
that
right.
is, I'm not going to plug. I'm not going to suck up to you, Mike. But it is. I will plug it because I do think of all the events I go to. It really is all the top executives across all categories, and even our competitors. And I have great conversation with competitors there. It's not a day to compete on our products and things like that, but talk together about the challenges of the industry in more generic terms and talk to a lot of leaders in the industry. So I love going, and we will be there. It's already on my calendar.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. I appreciate the kind words. We work hard at it, and talk about a lean group of people. That's just lean. So when you one of the things I've been advocating over the last 10 months or since last ECS, and I'm going to try and push it again pretty hard in ECS 24, is this need for succession planning. I'm going to make incentives available for attendees, so I can get a Tim Reniger and his son or sons and bring these younger folks into that audience. It worked really, really well the last show, and we're going to continue to do that. So hopefully that marries up with what you're thinking about going into the new year.
Yeah, I think that's a critical thing, and that was exciting actually at the dealer meeting. We got a lot of the second generation at the meeting, which I think was very encouraging to me. There was a lot of young faces in the crowd.
Yep.
Some of them are part of succession plan, and some of them are just the next generation to run a business. But I think that is a critical thing for the industry, right? What is the next generation look like? What are they? What are their thoughts about the industry? How are they going to change it? What transformation needs to happen to kind of make it a better place for them? But it was very encouraging. I think off the top of my head, I want to name names, right? But 4 or 5 people come to mind right now that I had a chance to talk to at our dealer meeting that really, the purpose of the conversation was how to get their successor more involved.
Right.
And that to me was a great indication of successful, business owners saying this thing's got legs and I want to continue to build it out and, bring the next generation along. So that was very encouraging.
Well, it is, and it's an absolute. It has to be an imperative, for the industry. So putting heat and light on that, I think, is good for everybody. And of course, the other thing too is spending more time on, the absence or the confusion around social media or AI and Chat GPT. I mean, I can see all kinds of weird things. How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, it is. I will be honest. If you asked me a year ago about AI, I would have looked at it more in terms of what I would call industrial AI. What we're going to use for manufacturing and production and quality control, and those are all things we were well down the path for. But it would probably not be something I'd talk about at our dealer meeting.
Right.
Those are like behind the scenes. I think Chat GPT changed everything. And I'm sure it was development. I'm sure there's more intelligent people than I who are more well aware of it. But as I started playing with it, as I started, understanding it, it really began to resonate with me that it will change the office. I have a bunch of teenagers. They're all in high school, and I asked them the honest question. I said, are you guys using this to do your homework and do some papers? And they basically told me what I wanted to hear. But I'm not foolish. But of course they're great, but their friends do.
Of course.
But I do see that as logical. That what and I talked about this at the dealer meeting, is if you can really capture all that, right, and you can capture all the information that's inside a company, what does that do for a company's productivity, and where do we play, right? So I look at our products, and I said this at the meeting. I really hope that when you gather that information and you use voice and you talk to an AI device, and it gives you the feedback you need. I hope they print the page so they have a record of it. But we want to play in the other areas that that information will be conveyed. So, we have the displays, for desktop, we have displays in the conference room, we have the laptops. So I think, companies have to start thinking about, well, if I'm in document management today, how is ChatGPT or an AI type system going to take all of the information in a company, not just what was put into the document management system, but as I mentioned, it'll capture emails. If you do meetings on Microsoft Teams, it'll capture that. So how do you take that information now and make it available, and where do we play? Because that's really always been our business, right? The transfer of information.
Right.
So how do we play in that? And that's a part that I wish I had all the answers right now, but I know that I have the devices that they'll be displayed on or be conveyed on. But now, how do I play and bring it from the AI into into my device? And that's the next step for Sharp.
It's my observation has absolutely no science behind it, but everybody that I work with that uses Chat GPT-4 or whatever, there seems to be a natural next step, which is I got to print that.
Yeah, yeah,
They don't want to go back; they just want it, right? So besides whether or not it's to use for homework or whatever, it shouldn't be, but people are printing it. So I wonder if there's some correlation between maybe a little uptick on printing because of that.
yeah. I still, it's so funny because there's so many ways that you can describe, how print's going to decline, and it's very easy to pick on them. And then you go, but wait a second, here's four other things that change it the other way, and
Right.
they offset. So, I go back just even, during COVID. I remember my kids, and everything was on Google Docs, and they were taking tests, and you kind of clicked a button and it automatically graded, and I'm like, oh
Right.
boy,
Right.
schools are a big part of our business, right? Well, they go back to school and they're right back to printed pages, and not only that, for costs on notebooks and textbooks and things like that, they literally print out the sections that they need to read, and the kids come home with printed pages. I'm like, this is awesome,
Yeah.
and so there's always, like, you see one thing that could maybe decline the business, and I wouldn't debate those, but then you see something else that changes it. And I agree with you. I have the same propensity. So what I use ChatGPT, it's
Yeah.
funny you said that. I do it on the road and kind of quick when I don't have a lot of resources around me to get information, and I send it to my printer.
Yeah.
I come back in the office and they're all sitting back there, and I come in, I staple them, and now I can kind of. I am, I like reading on paper. I mean, maybe that makes me old school, but I do see a commonality there that a lot of people do it, because again, I guess it's psychological. I don't know, but it's taking all this different information. You just kind of want it the way you understand things, right? You want it, and it may drive more print. So that's our hope.
Well, I'll give you one other kind of thought. By the way, I do think there has to be some regulation around this. I mean, I don't, ChatGPT doesn't bother me. AI doesn't bother me. Humanity bothers me. And in the wrong hands, that could be pretty dangerous. So, but that's just me, not you. So for clarification for the audience, he didn't say that, I said it. So let's talk a little bit. So did you ever play baseball?
I did. I love baseball. That is my passion. And I'm a huge Yankee fan, so I know you're going to pick on me, but
A little bit.
I can watch baseball, and I played baseball as a catcher, and I loved the thinking part of baseball. Right. I watch a game and I bore the heck out of my kids. I'm like, well, watch what's going to happen now. Watch this and watch that, and the game inside the game, so to speak. So yeah, I'm a huge baseball fan.
So you were calling the game. You were a catcher.
Yeah, and I always loved that. I love the action, right, and calling the game and things like that. That was, maybe I did have a little part of me back then that I love calling the game and calling the pitches and things like that.
So who was your? And we'll get back to the Yankees in a minute, but who was your favorite? Who was your baseball hero in your era, not overall, in your era?
In my era, it's a no question thing. It's Thurman Munson,
Yeah.
catcher again, right? So Yankee fan catcher, and I still all my kids. It's funny because you don't realize the influence you have on your kids, but all my kids wear number 15
Ah,
on the sports uniforms, no matter what the sport. So Thurman Munson is my guy. I actually have in my office a little picture over there, of Thurman. So yeah, he's my all-time hero. So yeah, every August it comes back to me. When he died in a plane crash. But yeah, that's
yeah,
what.
yeah. That was terrible. Look. There are a lot of Yankees I love. Right. as far back as Willie and DiMaggio.
You just said that. This is someone who's about to say, but.
Well, I won't use but a Chicago kid.
Yeah, yeah.
so, but now you have to go to the broader era,
Yeah.
right? So in baseball, who were your top three or four?
I think even, because of him being a Yankee, Thurman Munson, but I would say probably the greatest player that I saw that I can, that I'm fully aware of is Ken Griffey Jr., right? I mean, he was a guy that, he'd get up, you want to see him bat, you want to see him on the base paths, right? He was amazing, even though he crushed my Yankees in the ALCS by running from first to home.
Yes, he did.
But at least I'm open-minded, right? I can admit he's one of the greatest ever. Him and the one that it's surprising doesn't get enough attention. That you talk about the greatest of all time is Hank Aaron. Now, obviously, you think of him as a home run hitter, but he was a multi-perennial all-star and could do it all. He was one of those guys where just consistently delivered. That you don't always hear his name as the greatest all-time player. You hear the Babe Ruths and the Willie Mays, and that Willie Mays is my dad's favorite player. But you hear those names. But Hank Aaron. But I was kind of a little kid as he was finishing off his career, so I don't remember him as vividly.
Yeah, he certainly has to be arguably number one, two, or three. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So when you think about baseball as a career, part of that's your hobby, right? I mean, that's what you do, right? You follow it.
Yeah.
So what about, and final question on baseball, I promise, but when you think about pitchers, does anyone come to your mind as like, yeah, that guy was the best?
Well, that was a harder one because there's different periods, and obviously, there's a period during the steroid era that you got to, look at some players and question. I think when I think of a pitcher, right, the face that comes to mind is Nolan Ryan. I was again, younger, but I mean, basically most of my childhood he dominated, and you look at some of his numbers. Amazingly, he never won a Cy Young, but he was multiple no hitters. They had 5 no hitters. I think he had a bunch of one hitters, which is amazing, and pitched into his 40s. So he certainly jumps out. Since that period, there's been streaks, right, where someone's amazing for a couple of years, but there's not that longevity of greatness that kind of was from an earlier era. Today I don't know who I'd pick. I'm a Yankee fan, so Garrett Cole's going to be the first pick, but I don't see that one dominant pitcher right now. That made that I think is awesome. Now I will give a shout out to probably the arch nemesis, and all the Yankee fans out there might shoot me on this one, but Pedro Martinez, right? When he was on this game, I mean, he was a Yankee. He just dominated the Yankees, and you got to give him kudos because he wasn't this big monster burly man, but he could really throw the ball and place it. And so probably if you do that period, I guess in the last 15, 20 years, I put kind of Pedro up there too.
And I give you props for that. That was it. That had to hurt.
Yeah, that hurt.
That hurt. So what about Pete Rose? Should he be in the Hall of Fame?
With everything changed, yes. With everything now that's changed, and I think I get why baseball banned them, and I completely appreciate that. I do think that some of the standards have changed, and if you're going to have legalized betting on baseball now, and you're going to have sponsors that are betting shops, so to speak, and all the other things that happened in the steroid era and things like that you're now giving forgiveness to. I don't know how you don't say, okay, it's been 30-year ban, I guess, up at this point, I don't know, 25, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
That you don't say, okay, it's time to rethink this. And most hits ever in baseball history. Did a lot of things, played a lot of positions. If you remember, he played multiple positions. I think he came up as a second baseman.
Yeah.
I do think he ultimately should be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, I agree with you for all the same reasons. All right, so we're going to wind this down with a couple of easy softball questions. I got to ask about Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
So it's a question I ask pretty much everybody. What's your favorite Sinatra song?
So, this is, we've kind of covered it already. This is the simplest one I could be asked. New York, New York. First off, I grew up and have lived in New York metro area my whole life. So obviously the song resonates. But if you're a Yankee fan, if you hear at the end of the game, if Frank Sinatra is singing New York, New York, that means they won. Now, if they lose, on our little tidbit for those of you around the country, if they lose on the home PA system, they play Liza Minnelli's version of New York, New York, and that's the sound of them losing, so to speak.
That's a
Frank
tip.
Sinatra, New York, New York. But I will say, Mike, I did see Frank Sinatra right when I got out of college. I saw Frank Sinatra and Liza Minnelli together. And, I'll be honest, I wasn't a huge Sinatra fan back then, right? But you knew Frank Sinatra is Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
He's not going to do a lot more tours. And so I saw him and Liza together. So that's got to be over 30 years ago now. But yeah.
Wow, that's a treat. Not too many people can say that. So if you're going to, in wrapping this up, and you've been really, really a great guest, all that insight, I appreciate it, and I'm sure the audience does too. If there is a wish, that you would really like to communicate, some hope, some inspiration for the industry. There are a lot of people who say, Prince dying and all that stuff, and clearly this industry is resilient. I have an entirely different opinion. What encouragement would you give to the channel to say, you know what, guys, we are what?
I think, you touched on the fact that we're resilient, but we touched on a couple things today where I think that this industry, if you focus on what you've always been doing, which is really just helping companies communicate better, share information better, then there is still a ton of opportunity. And, I'm not going to sit here and say print is going to continue to grow. It's not, the business is not what it was 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. But what it is, I think there's a floor. I don't think print's going away. I think there's always people like tangible. If you saw the mess that's on my desk right now, you'd agree with that. But I also think that if you listen to your customers, there's just a world of opportunity inside those customers. And you just got to listen because you do have the advantages no one else has. You touch your customer regularly, which most of the IT space does not. You build them regularly, so you have this constant cadence of their needs. And then you're in their offices servicing their machines. So you provide safety, and we talked about this at the dealer meeting. You provide safety to that buyer, right? So you're a trusted, we say trusted advisor. What about trusted security, right? You're the one who makes them look good. And I think if you leverage those tools, it really is unlimited what access you can spread out into your customers. And I think that's what everyone's got to focus on. It's not like, I got to reinvent the wheel. It's take what you got and then build off it and build those pieces together.
Well, Mike, I thank you very, very much for all your insight, wisdom, and for your time. I know you're extraordinarily busy, and of course you have to go to Necker Island. You're coming up to rest. So, but you've been.
Tough one, Mike.
Well, I know you got some of the best dealers in the country going to that thing. So have a wonderful time. But I really do want to say thank you. You've been a great ambassador for this business for more than 20 years. Certainly the last 5 years. I wish you nothing but continued success. And I'm sure everyone in the audience really respects what you're doing. So we thank you very much.
Right.
And you might want to expand your Sinatra portfolio, but we'll work on that.
I know you had some song about the second city, but we don't talk about that.
Yeah. Anyway, Mike, we thank you very much. Have a great week.
Thank you, Mike. Have a great one.